initially came to Mac 1 in Joondalup with a friend. We decided we wanted to fight each other because that's what friends do apparently. We were working at Dome at the time and we were baristering, and we were broke uni students and needed a way of getting some extra money, so brainstormed some ideas, and fighting each other live on YouTube seemed like a good idea at the time. So we googled fight clubs and Mac 1 came up and started training, and I never stopped.
So Courtney came in about 5 years ago to the gym for the first time, and she came in mostly for fitness, I believe, and just something fun, something different to do. A very smiley person, always very happy, always willing to help you with anything. And as she got into it, started doing the jiu-jitsu and the kickboxing, started taking it a little bit more seriously. I could see that she had some potential there, and she sort of mentioned that she wanted to compete.
It was a bit of a natural progression. Started in jiu-jitsu, started doing some comps in that, then got the bug. Eventually went from that into fighting in the cage, and then fighting in the ring, and then fighting in the cage, and then just whatever fights came up, we kind of went for.
So I think 18 months ago we started competing. So we worked our way up, and she had her first MMA fight, and then from there she non-stop in 18 months she'd had 11 fights, and she'd competed over here and over Melbourne, and finally over in Singapore for the Gamma World Championships. So she's gone from having 0 fights 18 months ago to then just smashing through the amateur division over here in Australia and taking on the best in the world.
I think it was a big lead up. We'd had a couple of fights fall through, and I think prep time, it would have been 6 months of just non-stop fight camp, or what I thought was fight camp back then anyway. So by the time the fight came up, I remember sitting backstage and just feeling really calm. Like that was where I was meant to be at that point in time. I was ready. I'd never felt kind of that sense of serenity before. And then adrenaline kicked in as soon as the walkout song came on and we started moving in. But once the cage door shut, that was it.
Please go wild
It was
for Courtney Martin!
It was go time. I'd never experienced anything like it before. Getting my hand raised in that first fight, which was pretty terrible looking back at it. I think I only threw one shot and it was just an overhand on repeat, but somehow I did enough to get the win, and that kind of reinforced that this was the path that I needed to go down, that this was where I was supposed to head. By the time Gamma came around, I think I'd had six amateur MMA fights. I had 2 title fights. One was a defense, and I'd just come off my first loss as well. I'd done 2 boxing fights and 2 Muay Thai fights as well. So I was starting to really kind of build up my ring experience, and I found that was really beneficial in just dealing with the nerves and the general adrenaline dumps and the pressures and the fight camps, and just getting used to all of it, as well as kind of tailoring what I needed each fight camp. I found each time I learned something new, and I was able to bring that into the next fight camp that went on, and the next one, and so forth and so forth. So the more experience I built up, the more I felt confident that I was kind of starting to go in the right direction in terms of my training and my progress. So I think the biggest learning curve before Gamma was my loss at Eternal last year against Pippa Shaw. I really pushed that fight, and that fight camp, that was very intense for me. I quite a bit of weight in 2 weeks, which it was good at the time, so I know where my capabilities are and where my limits are, but I never want to have to go through that again. That was extreme. And I felt that it played a part in the fight as well. But I think the biggest learning curve of that fight was my mental game. I learned what it felt like to give up, and I learned that I never wanted to have to feel like that again or give in to that kind of component of my mind. So I'm really glad I went through it. I think it made me a better fighter at the end of the day. So if we include Gamma, I think I had 14 amateur fights in all disciplines over, I think it was 18 months. So it was a really short time frame, but I found that I worked really well going from fight camp to fight camp. Like, I'm a very goal-orientated person, so having these short-term goals that I could focus on and push myself towards really worked for me.
Even now, she's the most humblest person you'll ever meet, but she's the hardest worker, so it's very easy for me to train her. She just wants to work hard all the time, to the point where you're saying, well, stop, you need to take a bit of a rest now, because she just wants to train all the time, wants to learn, will do anything you tell her to do to practice and make herself better, and that's what you need to be a champion, I believe.
Gamma was probably one of the biggest experiences and opportunities I've ever had in my life. The prep leading up to it was intense. The fight camps were intense, and the mental work was really intense. And I found that the week before we left, the way my nerves kicked in was, instead of fixating on the fights and being nervous about fighting people and the actual, the main reason we were going over there, I found that I was more nervous about making friends and the rest of the Australian team, and just having to share a room with someone I didn't know, and all these things that I couldn't control. But at the end of the day, we got over there. The Australian team were amazing. Everyone was very professional. They were all there for the same reason, so we all had this common goal, and we just built each other up, which was really nice. We flew in and everyone was staying in the same hotel. So the hotel was just full of all of these professional athletes and amateur athletes and just amazing fighters from all around the world. And you'd go into an elevator and you'd be eyeing off someone who's in like another nationality's jumpsuit and being like, I wonder if you're about my weight, will I be fighting you? Who knows? And it was amazing. So every morning we'd wake up and we'd weigh in. There was no real weight cutting. As such, you kind of basically had to be on weight every morning. So we'd weigh in, we'd go have breakfast together as a team, and then we'd take the bus and head into the arena where they were having all the fights. My division was a little bit bigger than the other female division, so I was lucky enough that I got to fight on the very first day. So if you didn't have enough people in the division, you had to buy the first day, and then you moved into the semi-finals, or the quarterfinals the next day. So I had to fight at the semis to make it through to the quarters. So I got to fight the first day, which was really nice because basically the whole Australian team got to sit around and watch and really kind of barrack, and it was good.
I think it was about 40 or 50 countries that competed there, some really, really high level people, and it was a tournament format, so she'd have 3 fights in 2 days. And we knew going into that we didn't want to obviously compete and go like hard out for the first 2 fights, so the ideal situation is that she would finish the fights early in the first 2 fights, which she was able to do. She choked the first girl unconscious, and then the second one made her finished it by submission as well.
So my first opponent was a girl from France. the main thing with Gamma was that we really had no clue who we were going to fight. We didn't know what their background was. We didn't know what their strengths, what their weaknesses was. So it wasn't like a normal fight where you could tailor these things in fight camp and build up what you're good at, what they're not good at, and kind of make a game plan. It was pretty much just you have to go in there, work what your strengths are, feel them out a little bit, and then just kind of bring your all. So I fought a girl from France, and the first round it was just a bit of feeling out. I kind of went in with the game plan of we didn't know how many fights that I was going to have if I was going to be successful. So it was pretty much do as best as you can to finish it as quickly as you can without taking as much damage, because you want to be able to progress to the next round as fresh as possible. So first round was kind of feeling out her strengths. I kind of shut her down a little bit and took her to the ground. I didn't get the finish in the first round, so into the second I knew that I was pretty confident that I could take her to the ground again, which I did, and ended up sinking in a north-south head-arm triangle, and was successful with that win. It was nice. It was right in my corner. I had my coach telling me what to do. It was just calm, and I knew I was confident that I was going to get the finish. So we got the win on the first day. So progressed from there to the second day, which was the quarterfinals. I think we're getting all of this wrong. But because it was over 2 days, I still had to go back to the hotel. I had to stick with my meal plan and make sure that I didn't blow out, and I was able to weigh in the next day as well, because we had to wake up and weigh in all over again. I think had a total of 3 weigh-ins over the course of the 4 days. But yeah, woke up the next day, made weight, and went in for the next fights. So my second fight was against a girl from Lebanon who was quite a strong striker. Again, same game plan. If I was to progress to the finals, I wanted to make sure I didn't take too much damage. So I stuck with trying to shut her down as best as possible and take her to the ground, which I was successful at again. I think I got her on the ground at the first round, but just towards the end. And then second round took her down pretty quickly, and then just fought from back position for nearly the whole round, and eventually I was able to get the windpipe choke and finished it there, which was great. Didn't take any damage as well, which was perfect. And then got to the finals.
The final was against the current world champion from a different organisation. It was a very heavy-handed boxing girl, obviously MMA champion. And I didn't tell Courtney that at the time, because obviously as soon as I found out who she was against, obviously did some research and found out who she was. And she went in against a girl, and it just showed the heart that Courtney had. The girl hit her with some big shots, but she kept her composure. She's always really cool in her mind, and she was able to fight back and land some good shots herself. And then in the second round just came in and absolutely dominated the girl, and the third round dominated as well, and just absolutely laid it onto this girl, and then won the world title, which was amazing, the world Gamma title.
We finished the first fight, and we didn't really know how much time we'd have in between that fight and the finals. So pretty much focused on mainly trying to move the lactic acid out of my forearms. Like, I'd worked pretty hard to get the choke in that first fight, and I was definitely feeling it. So worked towards that, worked towards resting, making sure I was back on top of my breathing. We'd recovered as much as possible. Had a little bit of like liquid carbs, nothing too major, and just chilled out for a little bit. I think we ended up having about 3 hours or 2 hours in between the two fights. And then just started warming up again. I was fortunate that I got to watch her the girl that I was in the finals with, I got to watch her fight beforehand as well. So I could tell that she was a pretty solid striker. She was scrappy, she was strong, she was really strong. So going in there, I had a decent idea of like what her game plan would kind of be. Having said that, I was not prepared for that first round. We went in and we started trading, and she was throwing heavy shots. She was throwing bombs. And I was not ready for it. I covered as best as possible, but that first round was tough. She was throwing solid shots. I was getting rocked, but I was still trying my best to cover. I was still trying my best to return, get out of the corner. And I left that first round feeling broken. I remember it felt just like my last loss. I had that little voice in the back of my head that was like, just give up, like, you're done. There's no way you can beat this girl. She's strong. And I just remember returning to my corner and just being like, this is it. We've come all this way for me to lose the finals. Like, that's good enough. Like, coming second in the world, that's pretty good. Like, you've done well. But I then had this voice that was just like, nah, that's not good enough. You can't come all this way. You can't put all this effort just to give up now. And my coach just turned to me and was like, look at her. She's tired. She threw everything she could at you and she couldn't drop you. You took all of that on your chin and she could not drop you. She's exhausted and you're fine. You're fresh. You just got to go out there and take it now. So going into that second round, I was switched on. I was ready. I knew that I wasn't going out without a fight. I was going to put up a tough fight for her. She wasn't going to take this easily from me. And I knew that obviously her stand-up, her striking, her boxing was her strong point, and I knew what my strong point was, and that was my ground game. My ground game was solid. So I went in, I used my range, I used my jab and my distance to kind of keep her at bay until I was ready to shut her down and get in close. I remember the second round, I landed a lot of knees from clinch, some really heavy knees, and I could tell she was feeling it. So from there, I kind of was able to use a bit of my strength and secure the takedown. She went into turtle, and I just shut her down and started throwing heavy shots on the ground. I've never hit anyone on the ground as hard as I was hitting her. That was a lot. That was like a turning point for me in my MMA career, where I was like, I want this and I'm willing to give everything I can to get this. So I just went for it. There was a little bit of confusion at some point because we were in a ring and not a cage. She kind of got tangled up in the ropes a little bit, so the ref stood us up and we started again from standing. But by this point, she was exhausted and I was determined. So took her down to the ground again and just kept hitting her. The second round finished and I was ready to go into a third. I never felt so motivated in my life. Like, I was tired, but I couldn't feel it. The adrenaline was just like pumping. So went into the third. We exchanged a little bit on our feet and I did feel a lot better at that point. I felt like I was landing a lot more heavy shots and I was picking my shots more intelligently. And I just proceeded to take her to the ground again and threw some punches until the round was done. And I did enough to secure the win, which was incredible. That was the best moment of my life. I'd gone to Gamma, I'd gone to Singapore expecting nothing, just a bit of experience. I went over there thinking I might have 1 or 2 fights, I'd be against girls from other countries with some amazing experience and backstories and talent and skills and technique, and I'd be able to test myself a little bit, but I never expected to get to that point. I never expected to be in the finals or to win the finals or to make as much of a statement as I did in the finals, that I was able to walk away with the number one female fighter of the competition.
Out of the whole event, of all these countries and all these athletes, there was one male and one female was awarded a $100,000 contract with one championship. And Courtney, because of the way she performed, finishing the girls, and her heart that she showed, I'm sure that played into it as well, that she won the contract. So now she's a one championship athlete, and we're looking forward to obviously going and competing around the world now.
I didn't even tell a lot of people that that was a possibility, because I didn't think that I'd ever be able to secure that. So it was a real turning point for me in my journey, to show me that, you know, you've got some solid game here. Maybe you can do something with this. So yeah. So the next day we had our presentation night. We were all given our trophies. I got my first place trophy for my weight division. And as we were walking down the stage, one of the staff members took me backstage, back upstairs again, back up to sit down. Didn't explain what was happening. I kind of had an idea, but at the same time, I was kind of telling myself, nah, that's not what's happening. There must just be something else they need you to do, something you need to sign, or something like that. So went backstage whilst all the boys were getting all of their awards and their trophies. And then Ina came down and sat with me, and it was kind of at that moment where we were talking, I was like, oh, I think we might have won the best female and male fighter of the competition. And I think it had just sunk in for him as well, because he was pretty emotional. But for me, it was just a bit of, I was just in shock. I didn't know how to process it. I was like, things like this don't happen for me. I was just here to have a good time and get some experience. Like, why? This is surreal. Anyway, we did. We walked out on stage and we were handed our trophies, and we both got contracts for one championship. And we both were just in shock. Like, it was such a big opportunity for the two of us to progress our careers. It kind of fast tracks us a little bit. And one championship is an incredible promotion with some of the best fighters and all over the world. And the opportunity to fight all over the world is just insane. And yeah, I'm still pretty mind blown about it all now. I think I'm still in shock, maybe, like what, 6 months later.